So let's wait 1 more minute before we going to start with the program today. We don't want you, all the attendees, to miss the roller coaster, do we? So 70:30 it is. Shall we begin?
Sounds good.
Okay. Welcome to the Red Geographics Fairground. We are very excited to have you here, and we hope you're excited too. My name is Veerle, the marketeer within Geographics. And before you can enjoy this fun fair and see all of our marvels and wonders, we'd like to introduce you to Red Geographics and the people behind it. Then Hans will take over the stage and tell you everything about his favorite transformers. After that, Inge will give you some best practices of how you can build the most beautiful workspaces within FME. Our final act will be represented by Tom. He's going to show you how you can magically see through the ground. So stay tuned. Next slide. But let's start by introducing Red Geographics. We started in 2004 and quickly became a well-known and well-liked FME partner in the Dutch market and beyond. We have customers on every continent, except Antarctica, so we still have some work to do. Let's go to get Hans to know Hans a little bit better. The ringmaster of Red Geographics is Hans. Hans has been involved with FME as a user and partner since 1997. The good old days where you could simply email Don and Dale with support question. He is currently triple certified, recently won the Data Extraordinaire quiz, and on this moment, he is sharing his knowledge on the FME community, where he is one of the community champions. If he is not solving customer problems, creating brilliant workspaces, or working on a beautiful map, he's probably riding his bike. If not, he's taking pictures of people riding their bikes. Enough about Hans. Let's move on to my other colleague, Inge. So sport is definitely a connecting factor within Red Geographics, as Hans met our Lion teamer Inge while playing badminton. Within Red Geographics, Inge is working on FME workspaces, maps, and a lot of other administration stuff. She is very detail-oriented, focused, and currently on track to become an FME certified professional and certified trainer. If she is not working, she loves to make pictures of nature, going outdoors, or play with her cats. Or she's making great designs for Blue Geographics. You should definitely check out the design and products on bluegeographics.com. The good news? For everyone who's watching, we have a 10% discount on everything. Just fill in word there. And oh yeah, I always love to say that Inge can speak Chinese, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. Curious how I met Hans? You could have known. Hans liked to take photos in his spare time from people on bikes. So that's really how we met. I'm a professional cyclocrosser and super lucky that Hans is not only supplying me with super cool pictures, but also very proud to say that Red Geographics is one of my team sponsors. And oh, for everyone who doesn't know what cyclocross is, it's kind of mud wrestling, but then with a bike. Within Red Geographics, I'm responsible for marketing and customer service, which I try to take on a very energetic manner. I'm working part-time for Red Geographics. Enough about us. Let's talk about how we like to treat you. So, personal contact is one of our main values, and we are pretty proud of our short and fast communications. We also love collaboration with other enthusiastic organizations with the same value, to help our customers in the best way we can. If you come to us with a problem, we will do our best to help you out. And if we can solve the problem, we get in contact with the people who can. That gives us the freedom to do what we can do best and give you our high quality service you deserve. Another thing we do is share our knowledge. For example, on the FME user community, where Hans is one of the community champions, but also by giving training on different levels. Shoot a message if you want to learn more about the options. We have got some great online events planned. We are excellent and unique in combining GIS and cartography. Aside from being a partner from Safe Software, we represent another Canadian company in the same way, Avenza Systems. They are developing cartographic plugins for the Adobe suite, and a lot of other projects we do are focused on the border between GIS and cartography. This often involves using FME to process data from GIS into a beautiful map. Hans has studied cartography and absolutely loves maps. He's worked on big atlases for National Geographics, a number of different globes, many academic publications, and all kinds of maps in between. Enough about maps for now. Let's move on to the Transformers Freak Show. Step right up, Hans. He's going to tell you everything about his favorite Transformers.
Right, thank you very much. And let's see if I can switch presentations here. So yes, the Transformer Freak Show. Are you ready for this? So what I'm going to talk about in this presentation is some of my favorite Transformers, some of my least favorite Transformers, and maybe some interesting ways of using them. And I hope to inspire and amaze you, and then maybe help you get on the path of exploring all of the Transformers that are in FME. So there's currently about 500 Transformers in FME. And I want you to ask yourself and really think about this. How many have you actually used? So I haven't actually counted them myself, but whenever I do a training course, I tell people that as a power user, and I guess with 24 years of experience with FME, I guess I can say I'm a power user. I think I maybe use about 150 to 200 of them on a sort of regular basis. I certainly don't know all of them. Definitely admit to that right away. So there's a lot of Transformers in FME, and that's often the most difficult thing to teach new FME users is which Transformers do you need? So I'm hoping by showing you some examples to at least let you think about this for a little bit. And I think it's really important that you keep on experimenting and trying out new ways to work with FME Transformers. So one of the things that always comes up at the training courses, and one of the things I can't stop talking about, is the reason of the fact that I think the test filter is vastly superior to the tester. Because in a way, they kind of both do the same, but the test filter can replace a lot of testers. And you can rename the output ports on the test filter. So it's actually a lot better for self-documenting workflows. So rather than having an output port that says tester 1 failed, you've got something like dogs are not allowed, which in the long run for documentation of your workspace makes a lot more sense. In fact, it even helps yourself, because probably half a year down the line, you don't know what tester 1 failed exactly is. But if it says dogs are not allowed, that's a pretty good sign. That's a pretty good explanation. It's not to say that there's something bad about the tester, by the way. But, it's one of those Transformers that since better options have been introduced, I only use it in training circumstances. Another very important thing to keep in mind, and very difficult thing to teach people, is the fact that there's often multiple ways to get to the same end result within FME. And it sometimes can be quite different in terms of processing speed. So it really is worth experimenting in this case. For example, you could basically use the point and area overlayer or the clipper or the spatial filter to get the same results. So points that fall within an area. I believe something from a couple of years ago, the difference between the image rasterizer and the Mapnik rasterizer in processing speed was about 50%. That's actually quite a lot if you want to process a lot of images that way, if you want to do a lot of maps. What you could, for example, do if you're comparing geometries with each other, you can match them on the geometry itself, or you can use a geometry extractor to put that in an attribute and then match on those attributes rather than the geometry. That might, depending on how complex the geometry is, might make quite a big difference as well. One transformer I start to use more and more often myself is the inline querier. So if you don't know what it does, underneath, internally, it builds up a SQLite database of the data you put into it. And then you can execute a SQL query on top of that database, which quite often is a lot faster than the regular FME ways to do the same thing. So for example, if you want to find out what the unique values are for a certain attribute, you could simply do a select distinct query. And I've tested this with 1 million records, and it's about 50% faster than the sampler, which is another way of achieving the same results. It may not make it easier for other people to work with your workspaces because you have to know SQL in order to really be able to get the most out of this transformer. Otherwise, it turns into a black box for anybody who doesn't know SQL. So use it with caution, but you know, if it's the right tool for the job and it can save you a lot of time, definitely take that step and work with it. This is actually a little bit of a sidestep because it's a best practice thing, but actually Inge is going to talk about best practices later on, but I think this is so important that I really want to highlight it. I'm very much against renaming your transformers, because if I see a spatial filter transformer, I know that it spatially filters. If I see a transformer that's labeled do awesome stuff, I don't know what it does. I'll have to either hover my mouse over it or open its parameters to actually know what it is. So in order to facilitate that first glance understanding what a workspace does, please don't change the names. If you want to do something like that, it's probably better to use annotations. The problem even gets bigger if you change those names in the language that another person has to work with a workspace doesn't understand. So if I build up a workspace like that and I rename all of my transformers in Dutch, and then I have to send it in to Saves tech support for whatever reason, they're not going to know what my Dutch transformers are doing. So please don't do this. Please don't make it hard on yourself, and please don't make it hard on anybody else who has to use your workspace. Another one that actually quite often pops up on the FME user community is questions like, I have this string of coordinates and I want to build geometry out of it. How do I do that? And it's funny because we've got a lot of different ways of storing geometry in text. And some data format designers keep on finding other ways to do the same thing. So knowing that there are several ways of writing down geometry as text, so for example, XML or GML or JSON, or in this case, OGC, WKT, well-known text. If you can take that text string that you have and you can transform it into one of those formats, you could simply use a geometry replacer to have FME build the geometry out of it. Of course, you have to know what those formats are, but fortunately, FME help and Wikipedia is often a good resource for that. And it can save you a lot of hassle. Because otherwise, if I wanted to have to turn the string of coordinates into a polygon, it would definitely take a lot of work. And now I can actually do it within just one geometry replacer. Another thing, another recommendation that we often give people who take our training courses is upgrade your transformers. So whenever you upgrade your FME version, any old transformer versions that are in your workspace, they remain there, they'll keep on working, but they'll show up in the list upgradable transformers in your navigator. And you can go down that list and you can select them all one by one, and you can update them to the latest version. This will give you access to new functionality, and you will benefit from any speed increases that have been achieved in later FME releases. Now, it is a little bit of a drag because you have to do it transformer by transformer, one by one. And I sometimes come across workspaces with 40, 60, 80 upgradable transformers. So I don't really want to have to go through the whole process. But on the other hand, it, again, can make a difference. So it's worth doing. And we generally recommend that you do it with every major FME release. So 2021 came out recently. So that's a good idea to go through the workspaces that you use on a regular basis and see if you can improve them. And when you're doing it, also don't forget to update your readers and writers, because they don't show up in that list, but they can be updated. Just right-click them, update reader, update writer. Now, you've probably all seen the transformer gallery on SAFE's website, and the default ordering there is by popularity. So that got me wondering, what is the least popular transformer in that list that I use on a regular basis? So I went through the list, and the ones at the bottom tend to be transformers for specific formats or applications. And the least popular transformer that I regularly use, at least a couple of weeks ago when I was making this presentation, is the tweeter. And it's because for the past couple of years, I've had a workspace running daily on an FME Cloud instance, which takes a random snap out of a WMS service with Sentinel satellite data and posts that to a daily satellite picture tweeter account. And that's it. That's why I use it. And given its relative unpopularity, I might actually be the only one using it. Safe, if you're listening to this, please don't disable it, because, you know, I kind of like that tweet bot. But that got me thinking. So if I've looked at the least popular transformer that I do use, what is the most popular transformer that I don't use? Aside from the tester, because I do consider the tester to be functionally similar to the TestFilter, which I use on a regular basis, and I actually do use the tester in training courses. So going through the list, turns out to be the Python caller. And what the Python caller does, it runs some Python code. The thing is, I don't actually know Python, so that's why I don't use it. For me, it's a black box. Funny story, a couple of years ago, I had a really complex workspace for a client that they wanted me to update. And that workspace was, well, it was suitable for the workspace Chamber of Horrors that used to be in SAFE's training material. Mark, if you're listening, I'd be happy to send it in. But it's a really complex workspace, and it has a couple of custom transformers. One of those custom transformers has another custom transformer embedded in it, which has a Python caller in it, which had an error. And I don't know Python, but that custom transformer with that Python caller was created by probably the most well-known popular FME user worldwide, Takashi. So I emailed Takashi and said, hey, this custom transformer, it throws up an error. Can you help me? And the next day, I've got a response from him. He sent me a new version. He fixed whatever was causing the bug. And I could make my customer very happy. And Takashi, if you're listening to this, next time we meet, I owe you a drink. Another transformer that has often eluded me in what it does, and I've become sort of obsessed with it because many years ago, I think Dale made the joke about the attribute dereferencer, that there's only two people in the world who know what it does: the customer who asked for it and the developer who programmed it. And I've tried to come up with scenarios where I could use it, and I've actually had to use it once on a project. And what it does, it takes the value of an attribute whose name is stored in another attribute, and it saves it into a third attribute. It's I mean, I'm telling you right now, I'm still struggling with it, to be honest. But for example, what I've tried to set up here is with a parameter fetcher. I grab a user parameter, which is an attribute name that is stored in a new attribute, and that had been then being used in a label point replacer to grab the value of that attribute and use it to label a feature. Are there other ways to achieve this? Probably. FME is so complex and powerful nowadays, but this is one of the things you could do with an attribute dereferencer. Now, whenever new people start working with FME, whenever they come to us for a training course, I always tell them, start experimenting. The worst that can happen, actually the worst that can happen is that it actually works. As long as you're not working with live data, you cannot break anything. Be curious. Try and find different ways to get to the same results. If you found one way, but you think there's another way, well, try and find it. Really carefully think about the steps that you want your data to flow through. And I think that's actually the most important piece of advice. Think about what you want to do. Consider your steps and work them out in small bits. And of course, use best practices. Document what you do and why you're doing it. And actually, that's what Inge will be talking about later. But please use best practices. Get transforming. Get out there. Try and do stuff. If you don't have any inspiration in your daily field of work, try the FME user community and see if you can help another FME user get to help solve their problems. So with that, I think the power of FME is very obviously its transformers. I mean, it's a big toolbox filled with all kinds of neat little pliers and screwdrivers and whatevers. You don't need to know what all of them do. I don't know them either, and I don't think there's anybody in the world who actually knows what all of the transformers do. But it helps if you know where to look. So use the quick add, use the help, use the transformer gallery, and don't be afraid to ask. Try and take on bigger challenges, bigger projects, bigger FME workspaces, different ones as well. If you have the experience, if you have the opportunity, try and expand your experience with FME and actively try and find new challenges and new opportunities. Reach for the top. And if you need help, find me or my Red Geographics teammates or any of the other power users on the FME community. There's a lot of great people there who are very happy to help you out. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me, either via email or that's our Twitter and Instagram handle. Alternatively, at the end of the session, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or a Q&A, and we'll look at them at the end of the session. We'll try and answer as much of them as possible. Having said that, I would now like to hand over to my colleague Inge, our fearless lion tamer. Take it away, Inge.
Yes. Yes. Well, that was the freak show. I hope you're ready for the big workspace design and best practices carousel. Today, I will talk about workspace design and what best practices you can apply for maximum efficiency while still keeping the joy in FME. Yeah, my name is Inge van Daelen, the lion tamer of Red Geographics. I've been a part of Red Geographics for almost 2 years now, and it has been a wild ride for me, and I hope you walk away from this presentation the same way. I'm going to share some tips and tricks to keep your workspaces from becoming a mess. Not only will this improve your overall efficiency, but other FME users who use your workspace will be eternally grateful. And with these tips, you'll look like an FME wizard in no time. But also, please note that
This is mostly personal preference, and it's up to you to decide if they'd help you as well. But let's take a look at today's attractions. I will first show you how not to design your workspaces. And with that in mind, I'll continue to explain how to apply some of the best practices known. And these fall in a few categories, like documentation, corporate identity, we have the 3 R's, and debugging. And by using these tips, you're not only making your own experience better, but also the ones who are working with your workspaces as well. Let's get started on how not to do it. This workspace is a good example on how not to use FME. It looks confusing. It's difficult to spot how the process flows and how many feature types are used. It's hard to tell what it does and, more importantly, why. And a few issues that are noticeable right away are the illogical order in which the process flows, the crossing lines, and the unattached feature types. Let's say we straighten that out. It will look something like this. It looks better. Now the process flows logically from left to right, top to bottom. Lines aren't crossing each other anymore. And if you can prevent crossing lines, use junctions or tunnels to make sure you don't have confusing workflows. Input ports have been switched and the unattached feature type has been removed, so it looks much cleaner. And transformers or any other items that don't serve a function or aren't attached can best be removed because it clutters the workspace. And even though it looks better, we still don't know what's happening and why it's happening. And it would help if the author added some bookmarks and annotations to explain why he has taken the steps in this workspace. Let's see how that looks like. Now it looks much more clear. The processes are grouped together and it's easier to see what's going on. Some transformers have annotations explaining the steps. Short tip, Hans mentioned this, I'd say 5 minutes ago. Don't rename your transformers, use annotations instead. Anyway, there are different bookmarks. So the separate processes are easier to identify and the bookmarks have their own titles, which mention what each process does. Overall, this looks like a solid workspace. However, I would like to show you one of my own examples. These examples are all part of the training material provided by SAFE, but the next workspace is me trying to make it clear for myself. It's a workspace from the 3rd chapter of the training, and its goal is to make a new garbage collection schedule. I think some of you might know what that's about. And I'm still learning. Some things are sometimes difficult for me to figure out, and once I have figured them out, I forget them. So for me, it's easier to document every step of the way. So it's very easy for me to see what's going on, even if I haven't looked at it in a month. So this is what my workspace would look like. For some, this might be a bit much. And sorry, this isn't Dutch. I'm not saying this is the way to go, but it's very easy to come back to. And not only for me, but for anyone who has to use this workspace and speaks Dutch. The point of documentation is not per se describing what you're doing, but mostly why you're doing it. Why have you chosen to take these specific steps and have certain settings? Might seem like a silly, senseless task, but chances are 6 months down the road, you have no clue why you did it. Yeah, and as I said before, this is even more difficult for people who haven't built the workspace. And the documentation can be done by using bookmarks, but more of that in the next slide. A bit more about annotations. They are very practical. You have 2 types, and they allow you to explain per transformer what is happening and why it is happening. There are 2 types. The ones you see in this workspace are regular annotations, and you write them out yourself. And there are summary annotations, and as you may guess, they provide a summary of the transformer itself and the settings. So if you have an issue and you need to send a screenshot to your colleague, if you use the summary annotations, they know exactly what's going on. And next up, we'll take a look at corporate identity and how bookmarks also help with documenting your workspace. So as a company, we have our own corporate identity and have made certain style decisions that we all adhere to. So when I use one of my colleagues' workspaces, it's easy for me to spot what's going on. And in this example of our corporate identity, we decided how we wanted the different bookmark colors to reflect the different stages of a workflow. And a reader in a workspace will always be green and a writer will always be blue. And bookmarks are great for a number of reasons. One is design and documentation. Use it to subdivide a workspace and manage those sections separately. One is access. Use it as a marker for quick access to a specific section of a workspace. One is editing. Use it to move groups of transformers at a time, either as they are or collapsed. And another one is performance. Use it to improve workspace performance when caching data, because when collapsed, no data is cached within a bookmark. We also both use dark mode and the same kind of connection lines. And it may seem like small things, but it can make a big difference in how the workspace is perceived. Next up are the 3 R's. So in the context of FME, the 3 R's are quite straightforward. We have reduce, reuse, and recycle. For reduce, make sure that all the processes taking place in your workspace are essential. If not, remove them. Perhaps you're using 2 transformers to perform a task that a single transformer could do as well. Like the example Hans mentioned, instead of 2 testers, use 1 test filter. Then we have reuse. It means to build a workspace and run it over and over again. And I'm sure this is something most of you are already doing. And then we have recycle. That's intended to take parts of processes of one workspace and use them in another. So you save time in building. Then we have debugging, and that's the process of figuring out why the workspace doesn't do what you want it to do. And at the risk of being Captain Obvious, please do make sure you know what it is your workspace needs to do and what output you're expecting. Now, there are a few things you can do to debug your workspace. Make sure you set up your workspace using just a part of your data set. And with data samples, the performance is better and it's faster for you to find out where an error has occurred. But always do a test run with the entire data set, in case an issue arises that wasn't present in your data sample. Also, make sure to run the workspace with feature caching. FME will save the data and how it flows through every output port. And at every point, you can inspect the output and determine if it's what you want. An advantage of feature caching is being able to do a partial run and test parts of your workspace. You can also inspect your data with FME Data Inspector at any point in your workspace. Also run the workspace with feature counts. Feature counts show how much features go into a transformer and how many come out. It's easy to spot if the data is supposed to multiply and the output isn't double from what you expect. Keep in mind, FME does what you tell it to do. So it might run without errors, but the output may still not be what you need or expect. One way to prevent having to debug, develop your workspace incrementally. Place 2 or 3 transformers at a time and test if they run as they should and create the output you expect and want. Keep building your workspace like this until you're finished. Developing your workspace like this lets you immediately know where an error occurs and will help you eliminate those errors as you're making them. And as the carousel slowly stops spinning, it's up to you now. Try to come up with your own FME corporate identity and share it on the FME community. Very curious to see what you come up with. And any questions can be answered later on or contact us. Just let us know. Now, thank you for watching. And now you get to watch the final act of our show. Tom from the people group is going to tell you about their FME magic. So Tom, the floor is yours.
Okay, Inge, thanks. Let me share my screen. It will stop the other screen sharing, so that's what I want to do, I guess. And there we go. So just to check, everybody seeing my intro screen on automating as-built acquisition? That's great. Okay, well, welcome everybody. First of all, thanks for Red Geographics for inviting me to present this small presentation on what we did at the people group with the FME, specifically actually with FME server. So what we're going to watch today is let me click the next slide. So for today's attractions, I'll give you a small introduction on myself first and also on the people group. Then I'll show you the problem that our customer had, basically, and the objective that we formulated together. Of course, I'll show you what we designed as a solution, and in the end, I'll share with you the results that we had and the benefits that the customer actually reaped from it. Now, in the end, I try to add a little bit of my own personal wisdom to it in a few tips. After that, I think it's time for questions. So that's me. My name is Tom van der Putte, typical Dutch name. I'm a product owner at the people group. And I basically, all my working life, I've been working with geodata, geoinformatics, and that kind of stuff in different forms. Currently as a product owner, but also as an FME consultant. I've done FME development, I've done product management, but basically everything that I have done revolves around geodata. And I work, as I said, I work at the people group, and the people group is a company based in the south of the Netherlands. And it does a lot of things. There's a lot of different disciplines there. But if you want to sum it up, it's basically what we do is consultancy and work placement in a lot of different fields, such as the sub, but also above surface infrastructure. We do a lot of surveying services and also many ways of designing and engineering in the computer automated design world. If we look specifically at my own department, my own team, we do anything geo-related, but we focus on software development. So, for instance, we do what we make is a platform that automatically generates subsurface networks, like power networks, heat networks, fiber optic networks. We do a lot of CAD consultancy as well. As for myself, I design software, but I also do a lot of FME development. But the big deal here today is actually that was our goal, and that was the thing that the customer wanted us to solve is reducing their as-built throughput time. So I'll go deeper into that in a minute. But basically, what they said is it's currently at 60 days, and we want it to be 1. So that was quite a feat. In this presentation, I'll show you how we managed to do it. And our customer is called Stedin, and Stedin is a grid operator in the Netherlands. So they have a nationwide network where they connect homes and businesses to different gas and power grids. Of course, they also transport gas or power over those networks. And in the end, they need to maintain them as well. Now, the thing is with creating and maintaining networks is that you have to do the asset management very thoroughly as well. And that's where it went a bit south in this case. So their initial problem was that once the cables or the pipes go into the ground and the surveyor starts measuring basically where those pipes or cables are put, from that moment on until the moment that it's in their asset management or the nationwide asset management database, basically, that took Ordinarily, it took about 60 days, sometimes even more, sometimes a little bit less. But the problem is that our Dutch legislation says that it can take a maximum of 30 days. So there's a big gap there, and Steden basically asked us, so what can we do about it? Can you help us create something smart that will allow us to at least be within that 30 days, but preferably a lot faster still? So instead of 60 days, we wanted to get from trench into asset management into their CAD design software within 1 day. So that's the objective. Now, in order to meet that objective and in order to basically find out what kind of solution we needed to make, is that we had to investigate what the problems were. And Steden is a big company. It's a nationwide grid operator, so there's lots of processes and software and databases talking, and so it's a complex scenario. But the thing is the real pain after a thorough investigation, the real pain was predominantly in the field of the data acquisition. So that's a relatively small portion, but there's a lot of significant steps going on there that allows, and each step basically allows for a delay in itself. So for instance, as I said, after the cable goes into the ground, the surveying has to take place. But during surveying, it's not just going out with your GPS or total station equipment. They also have to fill in paper asset forms, and for each asset there's a different form with up to 80 different fields that they have to fill in. They have to take pictures of those assets. Then they have to go back to the office. They have to convert the raw measurements, the raw surveys into CAD drawings, so into AutoCAD files. Then they have to collect the forms that they or a colleague filled in the field. They have to collect the photos, then package everything and deliver it to the Steden Asset Management Department. Now, these steps can take quite some time already, but what we see in practice is that once it's been delivered, it's actually not complete, and the asset management department has to ask, I'm still missing a form, or I'm missing an image, or I don't know, the measurement's off, or something is wrong, and they have to go back to the contractor or to the surveyor, and he has to do everything again. So this is basically the main reason, or all these steps are the main reason why the delay can be so big. So what we did is, and I'm wondering now, because there's a portion of my Zoom screen in the screen as well. Is that sharing as well? I'll just drag it outside, drag it to a different screen. That's better. So what we went out to do is with the Steden as a customer, we sketched an ideal world that we wanted to end up, and there were a few big issues there. One is that we wanted to digitize all analog processes. The second one is that we basically wanted to push all the surveying data directly into the cloud and process it there, instead of going to an engineering department where the raw data has to be converted into AutoCAD data with all the interpretation risks of it all. So that was a big goal, and then automatically process that into usable CAD drawings. But also what we heard from the project leads is that they're, during the 60 days, or during the time it took to basically get all the surveying data processed and available, is that there weren't any project or updates, basically. So the project lead would be in the dark for as long as it took, and they had to call somebody, and then somebody had to call another somebody, and well, it's not very transparent. So any progress indication would have been greatly appreciated. And finally, when everything is ready, we wanted to automatically signal the asset management department when everything is ready, and that they could pick it up and basically process the stuff into their own asset management database. But the problem here was we couldn't change anything in their backend processes. So they have, as I said, they have a very large back-end system, or multiple systems basically, that had to do with the contractors and projects and asset management data. And we couldn't touch those systems, but also we couldn't change anything in the order of the system. So that was one of the requirements, is that it's all off limits. So we have to do something on the side of the current processes. So basically, in short, is we have a system that goes from trench into an AutoCAD drawing in 60+ days, and our solution that consists of FME server plus the organized platform, which I'll discuss shortly, that basically should take it into a much faster stride, where we end up in one day, hopefully. Well, I can already say that it worked out. So if we look at the solution, I'm just going to give you an overview of the solution, and then I'll dive deeper into the different steps on how we implemented it. So the first step was, as it needed to be fully parallel to their current process, so we couldn't do anything to their backend systems, is we needed to offload all their project data into our own project management platform called Organize. Now we used FME server, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it. We use the Organize platform and also email, but I'll discuss that later. So once the project data is in Organize, then we needed a mechanism that allows the surveyors to automatically upload data into the cloud. So that could be either FTP or cloud or the Dropbox or any cloud platform, basically, that FME can access as well. And once it's in the cloud, we need FME to extract it and then convert it into different data products. So that could be an AutoCAD file, that could be like an Excel file containing surveying data. It could be a PDF or whatever. And finally, once everything's being converted into the expected end product, we needed to publish that to our organized platform, but also reach out back to their backend system to let that system know that everything was finished and that project was ready, set for the asset management department. So just to explain a bit, I've explained it, or I referenced to it a few times already, and what we based our solution on, besides FME server, was our Organize platform. Now, Organize is a platform that we developed in-house, and it's a spatial management platform for projects. So what you see here is an example, and it shows you, like, this is the landing page, shows you all the projects that are currently in effect, with the different statuses, first of all, on a map, and there's different administrative overviews of it. And once you dive deeper into a project in Organize, you can get a much more detailed view. So for instance, in this view, you could see in a yellow line at the background, you see the design of a certain network, so the way it's intended. And in the pink dashed line, you can actually see the as-built scenario, so the thing that's actually been put in the ground. And there's also a few markers for images there. And you can easily see where the as-built basically differs from the design. And also on the right-hand side, you see like a progress monitor or a dial that shows you that it's just short of the 264 meters of design cable, and the as-built contains 258 meters. So just everything is geared towards having a quick and good overview on where your project is at that moment. Also, there's a very straightforward but nonetheless powerful file sharing module there, so you can upload and download and share all the files that you want. But I think the most powerful thing in this case from the organized platform for this solution was the way we communicate between organize and any other platform. In this case, it was FME server, and that's because organize is fully API based. So basically we created a layer around organize with an API that's exposed to other platforms. And for those who don't know what an API is, it stands for advanced programming. No, I just forgot what it stands for. But basically, it's a set of instructions that you. It's basically a language that enables our platform organized to talk to other platforms and vice versa. So it's really easy to share data between platforms or send instruction from one platform to the other. So that's the basic platform that we used. Of course, as I said, in combination with FME server, and FME server is basically it's the spider in the web. In this case, it's something that we can do without, and I'll show you why in the next couple of steps. So this is the solution broken up into steps, and I'll discuss each step in detail. So first of all, we have the backend, and as I said, we can touch it, we can do anything to the backend, and also the security around the data stuff or the backend process is very strict. So there wasn't any way of communicating with the backend except for sending out emails. So the only thing that we could have is get a regular email from the backend system containing an attachment with all the project data. So there's no two-way communication in this sense. It's more or less only a one-way communication through email. But what the customer does is he can send an email with the project data, and that uploads or send that to FME server. And FME server can then access organize through the API and upload the project data, but also the design drawings, for instance. So using FME server, we basically convert a CSV or an AutoCAD file coming from a backend system sent through a basic email into something much more advanced in the organized platform. Then when we step to the next part of the solution, and that was the surveying part. So as I said, once the cables are put into the ground, the surveyor comes along, so that could be the contractor itself or a different contractor, and starts measuring where every cable or pipe is put in the ground. So that's my colleague Tom over there doing some intricate stuff with the total station. But as I said, it's not only the location of the cables or the assets, it's also the type of asset and material and age and like a lot of attributes that they need to incorporate in this process. And what they did beforehand was use paper forms, sometimes even sketch it on the back of the form, paper forms with a lot of fields that they had to fill in. Obviously with a lot of risk of errors. So what we developed was a method in Organize itself to have a form, an automated form. So the surveyor just selects the type of asset, and then the form is pre-formatted. So you get exactly the right fields that you have to fill in with exactly the right values to put in there as well. Also, they can, using the same mobile app, they can make pictures, and both the pictures and the forms, they can just simply using an identifier match with the GPS locations that they measure in there as well. So we know that the forms and the photos end up in the correct position in the end. And once all that's done, it's pushed to the cloud. So normally that would be an FTP or a Dropbox location, could be anything. As long as FME can access it. So what we used here is a few FME automations actually. So one is watching an email box. Another one is watching an FTP folder. We also have one that's watching a Dropbox location. And basically, once FME detects that something has been updated or a new file has arrived, it starts processing that. And one of the main things in this process, and when you automate this kind of work, is that once you send it to the system and you leave, you can't fix your errors anymore because you're not on site anymore. So what we needed to figure out was a low-key way of processing the data and sending out early warnings if the data is not correct. And that's exactly what it does. So basically, when you send in your data, you push it to the cloud. FME server processes it. We have one workspace just for checking if all the data is there, if it's in the expected format, if the right attributes are filled, if it can create objects from the different raw data points that it accepts. And in this case, there's actually a protective cover there in purple. That's for some reason not entirely correct. So the surveyor gets an email with a picture stating, listen, you have to fix this error before you go ahead. But on the other end, if there's no errors, of course, it can start processing all the data, including the pictures, put the pictures in the right location. And that's all done within FME server. So it takes the surveying data, it looks at organize, finds out if there's pictures there or if there's forms there, puts them in the correct location, processes everything into specific objects and geometries, creates an AutoCAD file, uploads all of that back into organize, and then in the end sends an email back to the backend system stating like, so this project is in the next phase, basically. So that's what you see here. So this is the as-built data projected on top of again another example on top of a design file. It puts the images in organize in the correct location. So they normally take an image with a photo and the GPS locations from the telephone, from their mobile device is used, but that could be like 10 or 20 meters off, and using the correlation between the surveying data, they can actually get it projected at the exact location. And this is an example of what they end up with as of an AutoCAD file. It's just exactly formatted the way they want to have it. So that Stadium wants to have it with all kinds of remarks and standards, and that's uploaded to Organize as well. So the result of this entire automation process is basically twofold. So one is that we made one platform for spatial project management, and the other was that we have an automated and simplified workflow for validating data, but also for disseminating it. And I think I'm short on time, so I'll skip ahead a few slides. This is just to show that we shortened the flow quite a bit. If we look at the benefits, as I said, we reduced the throughput time from 60 to 1 day. We radically increased quality levels, and that mainly has to do with the automated way of collecting data, so forms and geometries. And in the end, Stadium has full insights and control over every step in the process. So one takeaway I want to leave you with is that automation requires a lot of standardization, and that in turn, that takes a lot of discussing with a lot of people involved. Everybody needs to redo or rethink the way they're doing stuff, and it's not as much as a technical feat as it is more of a human feed, as in discussing and guiding each other along the way. So that's all from my side. Sorry, I'm running a bit late. Thanks for listening, and I'll hand the floor over to Veerle, I think.
Yes. Thank you, Tom. I think, yeah, the echo is gone. We have 2 questions. We just want to answer them quickly. One was from Marcel. He asked, do you use a template for the bookmarks configuration, or do you have to do this by every new workspace? No, you don't have to do that every new workspace. You can make it once. Hans made ours, exported it, shared the file with me, and I was able to import it, and now I can use it every time. So that was my answer. Then I'll leave Hans to answer the other one.
It should be at least hearable right now. A question came in from Brad, whether or not we used any dashboards to show trends and charts and stuff. We have actually done some dashboards using FME. What I've done, this was for FME server, just to sort of extend on the standard dashboards that are in FME server. It turned out to be a lot of HTML and, in my case, chart.js hacking, I guess you would almost say. Definitely not an easy process. I think presumably now with Google Charts, you could probably do more or less the same thing, but you kind of have to use FME to massage the data to get into the right format. Fortunately, that is exactly what FME is for. So yeah, it's definitely possible. It can be a lot of work. And I think that's all of the questions. So handing it back over to Veerle.
So I have the honor to thank you all. Thank you for watching to the Red Geographics FME World Fair Day 2, or Day 2 is it. We hope you enjoyed our rollercoaster ride. And if you have any questions, please contact us. We would love to hear your challenges. Want to stay up to date? Follow us on social media. Yeah, let's connect there. Hans, is there anything you would like to say?
I would like to say something, yes. I would like to thank everybody for watching, everybody for attending. Especially would like to thank our guest speakers, Tom and Patrick, who spoke yesterday. Thank you very much for your contributions. And I want to give a big thank you and a big round of applause for my wonderful Red Geographics team, because it's been a lot of hard work behind the scenes and I couldn't have done it without you two. So thank you very much. And I think that is the end of our FME World Fair 2021. So thanks for watching and goodbye. See you next time.
See ya. Thank you all.